Good afternoon, and welcome to Protecting Yourself from Online Frauds and Scams. Apologies for our Zoom link snafu, but I'm really glad for those who have made it over to the Zoom link today. If you have a minute, go ahead and put in the chat where you are Zooming in from. We'd love to know what part of the country you might be Zooming in from. And we'll give that a couple of seconds. In the meantime, welcome everybody. I'm Sophie Horiuchi Forrester, Regional Director for AARP California in the San Jose office. I'm so glad you could join us for this very important topic. But before we get too much farther into the program, I'd like to make sure that we are clear on our meeting agreements. And we'll see a slide here popping up. Just real quick, we hope that everyone will keep themselves on mute. We don't want to have those distracting background noises. And please use the chat to raise your questions and add comments if you have them. We will try to get to everybody's questions. And then assume everyone's good intentions using respectful language and tone. So just those three things to keep in mind as we go forward. This meeting is being recorded, so those who can't be with us today will have a chance to view the program, or you yourself may want to watch the program again on AARP's YouTube channel. If you're not familiar, AARP is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. With nearly 38 million members and offices in every state, plus Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocates for what matters most: a focus on health security, financial resilience, and social connection. Today's program is going to focus on financial resiliency, which is part of our social change agenda. We are also today presenting this program with our affiliate, Older Adults Technology Services, also known as OATS, Senior Planet. And we're going to hear a little bit more from Ryan about that program. I'm also introducing Sarita Cardozo, one of our volunteers here at AARP, and she's going to be helping out with some tech and also to let us know who's in the chat today. Sarita, where are people Zooming in from today?
Sophie, I think Sharita might be on mute, so let me see if I can help a little bit here.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead, Sharita.
So we've got Shauna from San Diego. We've got Anthony from San Jose. We have Jay Sam from Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got Susan from Berkeley. Got a couple of people from San Francisco. Another person from New Mexico, Stephanie Barcelo. We've got Jill from Rio Rancho, Mary from Oakland, Tom from San Antonio.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people here.
Thank you so much. And so glad to hear we've got folks from all over the country. Before we get too far into our program, I'd like to take a quick poll that will help inform our speaker. What's going on in your neck of the woods and what situations that you may have already faced with regards to frauds and scams? And so you should see on your screen a poll. Have you received any of the following? Check all that apply. Friend requests from strangers, urgent emails from unfamiliar organizations, felt pressured to act online based on a phone call that you got. Have you been asked to make payments using gift cards or cryptocurrency? Have you also been asked to for funds to be sent outside the US in perhaps an unusual way? Go ahead and click all that apply here. if you've experienced these things. All right, I'm going to give it just a few more seconds. Great. And it does appear as though many of us have received that urgent email from unfamiliar organizations, also friend requests from people we don't know. It looks like folks have also been pressured to act online based on a phone call or make payments using gift cards, cryptocurrency. And a few folks have been also tapped to send money outside the US in some unusual ways. Thank you all for participating in that quick poll. Well, it's my pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker, who's going to shed some light on these online frauds and scam situations and how we can protect ourselves from them. I am delighted to have Jason Collom, Senior Inspector from the San Francisco DA's office, back to join us for our conversation on this topic. Jason is a police officer for over 27 years. He was assigned to patrol for 8 years before he was promoted to becoming a detective. Prior to his time in the DA's office, he was a special agent serving under Vice President Kamala Harris at the California Attorney General's office. He is also the founding member of an international work group established in 2012 to investigate and prosecute various overseas fraud syndicates that target ethnic Chinese communities across the globe. He's also working on groundbreaking work, and his work has been recognized by Interpol. Jason's also testified as an expert witness in the US and in Canada on various types of white-collar organized crime cases, and has worked to help law enforcement and other prosecution professionals from over 15 different countries. He's done a number of presentations for AARP, both in English and in Chinese, and so we're so delighted to have you back, Jason. Welcome back.
And thank you for having me, Sophie and AARP. It's always my pleasure to be coming on and speaking to your audience.
Great, thank you. So Jason, for those who may not know you or as familiar with your role, tell us a little bit about what you do in the district attorney's office.
And I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of people don't know that district attorney investigators or inspectors exist. And I am a police detective who's employed and assigned to the district attorney's office. And usually the district attorney's office hire police officers and detectives with about 10 years of experience before they can apply for this position. And so how my job as a detective for the district attorney's office differed from my job as a detective at the police department is that my partner is a prosecutor and not another police detective. I work in a horizontal prosecution group. What that means is that my partner, prosecutor, and I make initial contact with the complainant. We interview the complainant, we gather the evidence, and we're the only two people that the victim will ever need to deal with from our office. We take a case from intake all the way to jury trial, jury selection, jury trial, and sentencing. It's always going to be me and my partner prosecutor. And as you can see, what advantage of that is to victims of these types of cases, because they were victimized by strangers who called them, who emailed them, who identified themselves as somebody who weren't who they were. So I usually serve as the single point of contact for these types of victims from beginning to the end. Some of our cases go on for 3 to 5 years, and I'm always the same person that they reach out to and the same person who reach out to them to discuss the cases.
Thank you, Jason. That must be a comfort not to have to meet new people each time along the process. So tell us, what are some typical online scams that you're seeing now, more recently?
So I'm going to have 3 case studies on 2 examples later on in the program, but almost all of them were initiated via unsolicited contact with the victim through social media, email, telephone, and text.
Sorry, having my mute was going crazy there. And Jason, on these online scams, is there a particular mindset that you're finding with these con artists?
In the beginning, when we were seeing these scams, no, we didn't know who these folks were. This is back around 2014, 2015. But as the years gone on, and we've had more contact with overseas law enforcement, who has actually arrested these folks in the call centers and the computer centers, we're finding out more and more about them. And one of the key elements, it sounds like, and it appears pretty much from every statement that these operators tell us, is that they treat the victims as business clients. They have a daily briefing in the morning about sales goals. And there are, of course, rewards for sales goals. And at some of these call centers and computer centers, I've heard is that the more successful employees get the front office or front parking spaces where they can park their supercars as a motivation for the newer employees coming in to look up to in order to reach these goals. There are recent reports out of Hong Kong, Taiwan, and mainland China that more so nowadays, some of these staff members at the call centers are victims of human trafficking. They answered what seemed like legitimate job ads to work in the hotel industry in Cambodia. They even go through their local training academy to try to get these jobs. And once they get to a place like Cambodia, turns out they're locked up and made to do these calls with threats of physical abuse and also threats to their families overseas.
Wow, that is shocking. That is unbelievable. Jason, tell us a little bit about what makes the online environment different than from other forms of frauds and scams.
The bad guy can be anyone. The bad actor can be 15 years old, female, on one call. On the next call can be a 23-year-old male, or can be a 60-year-old female. It doesn't matter. So whoever photographs of people are posted all over the internet. And as long as they can crib photographs of somebody who will appeal to their victims in one way or the other, they can assume the identity. And as you can imagine, this can go on several times within an hour, depending on who they have on the phone or on the internet or social media with them.
Wow. So can you lay out for us kind of how the framework of a typical fraud or scam works?
It's like I said, it's very much a business proposition. They treat the victims are treated as clients. So some of the more basic retail skill sets, such as personalizing the contact, finding out something about your victim, finding out a common interest that you can discuss, then establishing a rapport to gain the victim's trust. Those are the key in sales and also in these types of scams.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, let's dive in. We'd love to hear about the case studies that you brought to share with us today.
And I'll go through 2 types of scams with 3 case studies that have been, these cases have been extremely popular this year, unfortunately. And to start off, I read from the FBI website in quotes, seniors are often targeted because they tend to be trusting and polite. They obviously haven't met my brother, but that's another issue. And FBI also says that they also usually have financial savings, own a home, have good credit, and all of which makes them very attractive to scammers. So the first case study that I have, and it's something that I've heard of over and over again from different jurisdictions. So this is from a nearby jurisdiction. It involves a 94-year-old male victim. The scam we call a computer remote fix. And the entire scam took place over 12 days, in just under 12 days. First, the victim received multiple calls on his landline. And interestingly enough is that on his caller ID, it displays the victim's name, John Smith. And so after about half a day of getting calls from himself on his landline, John Smith decides to go ahead and answer the phone. And once John Smith answered the phone, he was greeted by somebody who identified himself as David. John Smith described David as a very pleasant person to talk to. And the conversation led towards computers. And turns out David knows a lot about computers and works for a computer security and troubleshooting firm. David asked John Smith, "Does your computer run slow?" And John Smith says, "Well, yes, I think so." David says, "Well, that's my company's specialty, and I can give you a discount. I can go ahead and remotely fix your computer, make it go faster for $30. John Smith agreed to that. $30 for a fix, it's very reasonable. So the next part, we're not too sure about, because the 94-year-old victim, John Smith, was a bit cagey, and at the same time, his memory just wasn't all that anymore. So for this $30, David instructed John Smith to go ahead and wire John the money, $30. And so what we think happened was that David logged on to John Smith's computer with John Smith's permission, guiding him along. And David helped John Smith transfer the $30. Unfortunately, David made a mistake and showed John Smith on John Smith's computer screen that David mistakenly transferred $30,000 from David's firm into John Smith's account, the victim's account. Instead of taking $30 from the victim's account to the company account, now the company account transferred $30,000 to John Smith's personal account. David had a meltdown. He said, "I'm going to get fired. I have kids. I have a sick grandmother. I have a sick mother that I have to take care of. And this company, they're not nice. They're going to threaten my family. And I need help." The victim, John Smith, says, "Well, I'm sorry, but how can I help you?" And David says, "Look, I overpaid you by about $27,000. And again, the figures are a bit off, but this is taken straight from the report. Why don't you, John Smith, go down to the bank and wire transfer back $27,000 to my employer?" John Smith says, "Yes, I can help you with that." And while John Smith is preparing to leave the house, David got on the cell phone with John Smith and walked him all the way to the bank. And the Bank of America branch that John Smith usually visits near his house, as soon as he's about to walk through the door, David says, "Don't go in there. Do not go in there. You can't trust that branch. What's the next closest Bank of America branch?" So ended up, David stayed on the phone with John Smith, went to a different bank where the tellers did not know John Smith, where he doesn't usually bank. And John Smith somehow wired $29,450, following instructions of David, to an account in Hong Kong in which the account holder's name is not David. From that point on, it's not clear exactly what happened. And we talked to the victim several times to try to get the story straight. But the victim, John Smith, just kept telling us, look, it just got out of hand at that point. So 2 days later, after the $29,450 was wired to an account in Hong Kong, 2 days later, John Smith initiated another wire of $44,000 to yet another account in Hong Kong. And again, we don't know what happened, but 10 days after the initial call, John Smith went down to Bank of America and wired another $73,850 to yet another account. But this account, instead of being in Hong Kong, was a Chase branch in Los Angeles to yet another person's name. So 2 months later, when the local police department got a tip from a New Jersey police department saying, hey, look, we're looking into these cases and possibly your victim lives in your town and we have a pretty good suspect. Detectives from the local agency went out to talk to John Smith, 94-year-old man, 2 months after his last wire transfer. John Smith says, thanks for coming, because I'm still locked out of my own computer, and David's name is still on the login screen and can't be bypassed. So basically, for more than 2 months, David, or the scammers group, has been inside the victim's computer doing who knows what. In terms of the investigation, because the last transaction was in a US bank, we were able to seek a search warrant for that Chase bank account for the bank account holder information. Investigators were able to confirm the incoming wire of $73,850 from $73,850 from the victim's account to this account in Chase. Furthermore, through a search warrant, the investigator was able to obtain photos of the account holder coming into the branch and making multiple large withdrawals from his account. From that point, a warrant was issued for the account holder, the suspect's arrest. 11 months passed since the victim, John Smith, was first contacted by David. The suspect, the owner of the Chase bank account, was arrested at LAX as he was trying to depart the US on a one-way ticket. The total loss to John Smith, this victim of a $30 computer fix, came out to $148,000. Total recovery, even though one of the suspects was arrested, total recovery was zero. On the next,
yeah, shocking. Yeah. That's so sad. Oh my goodness.
And the next case study I call the policeman. Somebody who we all think should know better. But again, I just want to let folks know this can happen to anyone. It's a friendship investment scam. It occurred this year between May and August. So on or about May 23rd of this year, the suspect messaged the victim. We'll again call him John Smith. The suspect introduced herself as Amy, who owns a salon in Los Angeles. And John Smith befriended Amy because, in his words, she was very nice. And in our conversations, Amy spoke very well and asked normal questions. So there wasn't anything strange that that John Smith detected. And Amy went further and says, it was fate that we met. And the number that I reached you initially is actually my work number, but here you go. Here's my personal cell number that you can reach me 24/7 now with a different area code. So a few days of conversation goes by, something like 3 days. And their conversation led to investment in cryptocurrency. Amy said that her uncle is a successful investor and has a team of Wall Street professionals helping him, in quote, predict market movements to generate profits, and offered guidance on how to invest in short-term trading and lock mining. I don't know what those things are, but apparently John Smith was impressed. So impressed that Amy guided John Smith in creating and funding an account. So on May 30th, 7 days after the initial text message from Amy, the victim John Smith funded the account with about $100,000. And the victim, John Smith, he already had a cryptocurrency account. So he bought into this new account or funded this new account with Bitcoin and Ether. And the website then converted the victim's Bitcoin Ether into Tether, yet another cryptocurrency. And so Amy continued to guide John Smith, suggesting certain investments in his account. And by June 3rd, the victim, seeing that he's got a good friend that's who's on his side, and he's seen that his account has grown enormously, on June 3rd, about 2 weeks after their initial meeting, the victim, John Smith, transferred additional $100,000 into his new investment account. So the victim, John Smith, then followed Amy's advice about staking. And Amy said that it would have a 80% return on his investment if he just locked it in for 3 months. So the victim, every day while talking to Amy, logged onto his account and just saw his investment grow exponentially. And again, John Smith already had some experience in investing, so he couldn't believe that his good fortune in that his money was not earning single-digit returns, but double and almost triple-digit returns. So he tested the account by withdrawing a little bit money and saw that he was able to take the money out and put it back in his Coinbase account. And from that point on, he was pretty sold. So by July 19th, less than 2 months after meeting Amy initially, the victim invested an additional $100,000 through this investment account. And the victim, John Smith, thanked Amy and said, oh, you know, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to make this money. And, you know, my goal is to turn my $300,000 into $1 million. And Amy says to John Smith, well, you can thank me just by taking me out to dinner when I come to San Francisco to visit you in August. So at the end of August, Amy hasn't shown up yet, giving excuses of why, you know, she couldn't. Her business was booming. She was busy. And so on the maturity date, John Smith tried withdrawing his $300,000+ initial principal investment and the additional $250,000 that he made, locking in his money for 3 months. And he was not able to pull his money out. And instead, he got this email message from the financial institution. And I'm going to read that email verbatim and see if it makes sense to you and see if you see any red flags if you saw this. In the email, the financial institution says, "Dear user, you initiated multiple withdrawal operations on the Wealthfront Exchange website which triggered risk control. Wealthfront Risk Control Department has verified that the withdrawal address you initiated, it's not the same withdrawal address. In order to ensure the security of your account, the Risk Control Department has now frozen the account. If you need to resume normal withdrawal, you need to pay 10% of the total account funds. The total account funds being $560,000. So Risk Control Department is asking John Smith to pay $56,000 again as risk control deposit and verify your real name identity information. After account verification is completed, the funds of risk control margin will be returned to your investment account within 1 to 3 business days. For details, please contact online customer service. I hope the red flags went up in your mind too. Grammatically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are some terms that I didn't understand that sound like were made up to make it more complicated. But basically, when the victim tried withdrawing the entire balance of his account, the financial institution says, well, pay us a 10% or $56,000 deposit, and we'll get your money back and return your deposit at the same time in 1 to 3 days. So again, the loss to John Smith at the end of the day, it's about $330,000. And thus far, with joint investigation with several task force and investigators, we're able to track down about $116,000 and froze that asset. So this $116,000 is waiting for a court order to be released back to the victim. But again, remember, the victim invested about $335,000, and now he's going to get back about $116,000, possibly. That's case study number 2. Case study number 3, very, very similar MO. And again, I just want to get it out there that doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how old you are, where you are, you may fall victim. So the last case study for the day, I call the successful businessman. Same thing is a friendship investment scam. And this scam occurred between July of this year and September of this year. Victim believes he's an above average stock trader. We'll call him John Smith again. In July of 2022, John Smith posted a political opinion piece in his own Facebook page, opened it up for public comments. Soon after, he got a contact message from somebody who identified herself as Haley, who was very interested in John Smith's political comments and opinion. She showed intense interest and debated with John Smith over text messages for a few hours. And eventually, Haley says that, now I understand your point of view, and I would like to repost your political opinion on my Facebook account. John Smith says, that'll be nice because I want to get the word out. So soon after, Haley asked John Smith, my Facebook account is frozen. Do you know why? And John Smith says, yeah, you know what? It probably has something to do with you reposting my political opinion. And so now John Smith feels bad that Haley was locked out of the account, something that he thought he caused. So they have further discussions about other things. And over the course of several days, John Smith told Haley that although he's older, he's in his 60s, and Haley identified herself to be in her 30s. John Smith thought Haley was his confidant. Haley says she lives in Southampton, New York, and she used to be an analyst for Goldman Sachs. And she used to be, that's the key here. And so John Smith says, well, how come you're no longer an analyst for him? Well, Haley says, well, because I do better on my own. She explained some difficult terms to John Smith in terms of economics and investments. And she said she's just been making so much money trading cryptocurrency that she doesn't need to work for a corporate firm anymore, that she can just do this at home. John Smith got really interested. So John Smith started talking more and more about this type of investment, and Haley just kept telling him how great it is. And Haley went as far as telling John Smith, look, if you want to learn more about this, I recommend a book, The Bitcoin Standard. Read it from front page to back, and you'll understand this whole cryptocurrency trading and why it's a win-win. John Smith actually went out to Barnes & Noble and bought this Bitcoin Standard book, read it from front to back. He thought he understood the market, the concept of cryptocurrency. Amy is there to help. She says, in fact, there's a website that lets you do a demo run on how to invest in cryptocurrency. So why don't you download this demo app, and you and I can go invest together with no risk, and I'll teach you how to operate this investment vehicle. They went through this demo, and the victim, John Smith, thought, this is great. I'm learning a lot. I'm actually seeing that I could potentially make a profit using the real investment account. The victim was really happy because he was at that point in his 60s. He's had quite a nest egg, and he was actually seeking out new investments that paid a little bit more than what he was used to in the equity market. And now he's twice as excited because he has a free analyst who's working on his side. So within a week of meeting Haley, Haley guided John Smith to an investment site, and John Smith turned $100,000 of his fiat cash currency into cryptocurrency through Coinbase, and then forwarded the money to this trading firm and funded his trading account with $100,000 of investment, initial investment. The victim, John Smith, made a significant profit almost immediately. And over the course of a month, the victim saw how much money he could make and started pulling money from all of his accounts. And he was able to pull together $500,000 in total in that 1 month and put it in this investment account, and saw that he got a $200,000 profit within a month on a $500,000 investment. And so John Smith wanted to know that he's able to easily withdraw money from this account. So he wanted to test the waters because, he's thinking, well, is this true? Because I'm making a lot of money. Haley says, no problem. It's a very simple process. I'll guide you to withdraw money and put it back into your Coinbase account. So Haley suggested, why don't we go ahead and try to take $1 out of this investment account, put it back into your Coinbase, the amount of cryptocurrency that equals $1. Successful. So John Smith is now convinced that he's able to take money out because this $1 worth of crypto went back to his Coinbase account from the investment account. Now, John Smith deposited an additional $500,000 into the trading account. So with the original $500,000 and the fresh $500,000 within a 2-month period, But the dollar withdrawal back to his Coinbase, now John Smith is in for $999,999. Within a very short period of time from this almost $1 million principal, John Smith made $500,000. Really good. But the maturity date wasn't up yet. It wasn't until October that he could withdraw the whole sum with no penalty. And at that time, Haley suggested yet another trading platform, saying that this is a brand new trading platform and the trading cost is even lower than what we're used to in this other trading platform. Just imagine lower cost by just a percentage point on $500,000. It's going to mean a lot. And John Smith says, I don't have $5,000 to fund this account. And Haley gladly jumped in and said, hey, how about this? Let's open an account under your name. I'll fund out. How much do you have? How much do you think you can come up with? John Smith says, maybe I can borrow $250,000. Haley says, no problem. Why don't I go ahead and deposit $250,000 into your account under your name, and then you come up with the other $250,000. John Smith says, that sounds really reasonable. And John Smith opened yet another account with another trading firm, with Amy funding the $250,000. John Smith, now depleted of his retirement savings and his cash savings, asked his sister to borrow $250,000. John Smith's sister says, well, first, I don't have $250,000. Secondly, this sounds like a scam. John Smith says, no, this can't be a scam because Haley is a real person. She's nice. I've got a picture of her right here. So John Smith's sister takes the picture from her brother, John Smith, and plugs into Google image and finds out this person in the picture has multiple names all across the internet. But truthfully, she was or the image of the person, it's actually a CEO of a Japanese pharmaceutical firm. The name is in Japanese. Makes it harder for us to Google search someone when it's a non-anglicized name, if you understand that. Furthermore, John Smith's sister plugs in the investment firms that he's been going through into Google and only saw 2 results from Google. In our experience, if we plug in Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, you're going to get hundreds of pages of returns. But it should be a red flag when you plug in a firm's name and you only get 2 results. So, of course, by the end of September, when the sister wouldn't loan the money to John Smith, and John Smith hearing that he might be scammed, he was pretty desperate. So somebody actually posted on Haley's Facebook page saying that Haley is a fraudster, and I know who she is, I know where she is, and what's that about? And turns out when John Smith messages this person who says he knows where the scammer is and who this person is, the supposedly detective who tracks down these types of online scammers gave John Smith more information, telling him, yeah, I know that's a person, I know that's a guy in Thailand, I've got his address, I know what he drives, and on, little tidbits here and there. And the supposedly internet detective would kind of let the information, the bits and pieces of information stew in John Smith's mind, because John Smith will ask him yet another question over another question, but the detective wouldn't answer for a day or 2. Ultimately, the detective messages John Smith and says, I know how to track this person down and get your money back. You can retain my services for $30,000. So experience from that on another case is that detective probably works with Haley, the scammer, or is somebody who worked their own scam, which is to pretentiously or pretend that they're able to track down these scammers. So John Smith's lesson, well, at the end of the day, John Smith, who said he just really wanted to double his $1 million saving just so he can pay for his daughter's college tuition, buy his wife a new car, and build an addition to his house. His total loss came out to $999,999 because, again, he got the $1 back. And those are the 3 case studies that I have, and those in different forms but similar MO have been what we've been seeing at the DA's office and in the news in the last 2 years. So in the next segment of how to identify a scam, this is something that I typed up, and hopefully if you find it useful, you can screenshot it with your cell phone or your computer. It's something that's nice to keep. So if you're unsure, Google image search the person, much like John Smith's sister did, because that image might have multiple profiles, names, or identity, and because that image is stolen from a real person's website. Google the investment website. I've talked about this because a trusted, established investment website would have multiple pages of search results when you use Google. A newly established institution might only have very limited ones. IP lookup. Free search engines out there, make sure you don't pay for this, to see where on earth this person you're talking to is. See if it even matches where they say they are. Any discussions about money and assets should be a red flag to you. I use the stranger on a bus analogy, is that you just met these people online or via social media. You don't know them. Why would you discuss money and assets with them? It's like sitting on the bus next to a stranger. The stranger starts asking you about money and assets. There's no reason to talk to them about that. Now, urgency on needing you to send money, such as deadline for discount on investment, medical expenses, taxes, withdrawal fees, airplane tickets, and bail. What's the urgency of that? You don't need to urgently send any money, especially to people you've never met and don't know. Instructed to liquidate your retirement accounts? Well, I've got most of my victims actually liquidated their retirement accounts. So upfront, they pay an income tax for that year, 36%. Then they got to pay IRS penalty if they're not 59 years old yet. And they have to report all that on their taxes. And how can you make yourself whole and put it back in your account? I know it looks very attractive that you might be able to make 100% profit or 50% profit, but please ask yourself, you've worked your whole life to sock away little bits at a time into these retirement accounts. Why would you want to one-time take it all out and take a huge gamble online? Because that's what it is. You're instructed to make payment or investment by purchasing gift cards. I don't know any government agencies or any legitimate financial institutions who will take gift cards as payment. You're instructed to go to a public cryptocurrency ATM to send cash. I had a victim couple in their 80s 2 years ago. They were instructed to go to the cryptocurrency ATM machine at their local gas station. They ended up stuffing $750,000 in cash into this ATM in over a period of a week. Never saw it again. claims to be in the military, live across country or overseas. These are all excuses as to why your new friend can't meet you immediately. And next slide. They profess love, kinship, or faith quickly, much like the examples I had. You never met them, they never met you, but somehow they're the best connection you ever had. Pressure you or guide you to a particular website investment. In terms of the John Smith with a book, I've never seen that MO. I think it's excellent because the scammer is actually trying to seem like she's educating the victim by having him read up about what he's about to invest in. Great move. Moving the conversation to an encrypted communication app such as WhatsApp and WeChat, those cannot be saved. We cannot get search warrants to get those conversations. Encouraging you to use disappearing text or erasing your conversation daily. So you're not leaving any evidence behind about your suspects. Instructed not to trust your bank or to respond to tellers' questions in untruthful ways. What do I mean by that? I've had seniors who walked in a bank, demanded to withdraw the entire life savings from their accounts. The teller says, hey, look, are you being scammed? I think you are, because they have to, right? But they've been instructed, the victim's been instructed by the scammers to say, hey, I'm helping my daughter make a down payment on a new house. They help you. The scammers help you in making up these untruth ways. You're threatened by law enforcement action. We've heard the arrest of your loved ones by the federal government, by overseas law enforcement, by local law enforcement. And once you suffered a loss, another person messages you with details of your scammer and offers to track down for a fee, just like the example I had, the internet fraud detectives. They come in to clean up. So whatever the original scammer didn't take from you, they're going to take from you. Next slide. If you believe you're a victim of scam, cease communication immediately. Remember, they interrupted your life. You don't need to be polite to them. Note and identifying information such as email addresses, IP addresses, capture the full header with a screenshot. On a mobile device, you usually hold down the home and power at the same time to take a picture. On a Windows-based computer, you hold down Windows, Shift, and S at the same time, then hold and drag the image, and you can place that image into a Word document. We want you to draft a detailed chronological summary of the incident and assemble all supporting documents to tell your story. Tell us what happened to you. We had to guess a lot of this, the story from the 94-year-old because his recollection just wasn't there. So as soon as it happens to you, as soon as you discover it, while it's still fresh on your mind, please draft a chronological summary. And that will also help you in down the line reporting to all the different agencies that I asked you to report your incident to. So you don't have to repeat your story over and over again. Contact your bank or credit card company if you think you've given money to a scammer. Notify the website or app where you met the scammer. If it's Facebook, let Facebook know. I met this person, this is what happened. There you go, please help. Hopefully they'll bounce that person out of there. File a report with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. The links are there, and I think they'll be available for you. And you can also take a screenshot of this. Again, on a Windows device, it's Window, Shift, S at the same time, cut and paste it onto a Word document. File a report with the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center or the IC3. Again, if you've written out your statement, you're in chronological order and with supporting document, you can just cut and paste that document right into these reports so you don't have to type a fresh statement every single time. File a report with your local department, police department. Insist on that. Really, really, really important that you insist on this. You may have to reach out to an elected representative and have that representative tell the police department to take your report, which is what I've had to explain to victims, because police will say, hey, look, you already made these complaints through the Fed websites. We're not going to take a report from you. No, this crime occurred in their city, in their jurisdiction, they need that police report. Why would a victim need this police report? For example, the local police is going to be the only police agency who has ever seen the victim and identified the victim in real life. The FTC, the FBI, they've never met the victim. In order for a place like Hong Kong police to try to recover funds for you, they need to know that there is a true victim on the other side, because they're sticking their necks out to freeze the bad guys' bank accounts. Please insist on getting a police report. If you need financial assistance and also to report your scam, call the United States Department of Justice National Elder Fraud Hotline for victims 60 and over. The US DOJ works closely with the FBI IC3 group to try to solve these crimes. And again, I hate to tell you, but I have to, is that you may not ever get a call back from the FBI or the FTC because they're looking for a large pattern. So they're looking for the large fish. So if they're looking at a particular investment firm and they see that they've had hundreds and hundreds of victims, they're more likely to start working on those cases first. But please, do yourself, do other victims a favor, report these cases to all these agencies, because the more of these cases we know about, the more chance we're able to help the new victims.
Thank you, Jason. What scary case studies that you shared with us, but appreciating those tips on how to spot scams and what to do if you suspect that you are a victim. Time is really tight, but if you're okay with it, we'd like to take a couple of questions from the chat. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. Can you spot a couple of questions for Jason?
Sure. Going through the chat. The first question we received is, can you talk about senior benefit scams? They call me a few times a day offering final funeral insurance with no exam. They're pushy. I ask them not to call. I block each number they call me on. Thanks for your presentation. Very informative.
So one of the things that you can do is go to the Federal Trade Commission website, and there's a do not call list. Make sure you put yourself on that do not call list, and it should cut down on some of these calls. But again, a lot of these callers actually operate outside of US jurisdiction, and they use computers who help them make thousands of calls just within a few minutes. So what I always suggest is have caller ID. Don't answer any calls unless you know you're expecting a call from that person, and just go ahead and let it roll into voicemail. And once it's in your voicemail, now you can decide whether to call them back or not. I am kind of famously quoted in the Chronicle in that if you get a call from somebody you don't know, just hang up.
Oh, thanks so much, Jason. And a second question is, can you talk a little bit about online romance scams?
So because many of my victims of these scams are married, they have children, when they report the case to us, they usually leave out all of the romance part. So in the last two case studies that I did, what I call the friendship investment scam, those are both actually romance scams, because both John Smiths in both scenarios, one of them was not married and he was looking for a marriage partner, this salon owner, Amy from LA. And the second John Smith in his 60s, who was going to make some money so he can buy a new car for his wife. Well, he was actually flirting with this supposedly 30-something-year-old business analyst and hoping to further a romantic relationship.
Great. Another question. Can you explain how to do an IP lookup? And ditto for doing a Google image search of the person. Is this the same as using Google Lens?
It's pretty simple. It's hard to do it without having the computer here. But if you go to Google Image, so type in Google Image will pop up. You can cut and paste that image, whatever image you want, right into the search box, and all the results of images that look close to that person in the image would pop up with all the aliases. And then in terms of the IP lookup, there are many tools out there, and they're all free. Just do a Google search for IP lookup. If they ask you to pay, go to the next site. And then once you plug in the IP address, it'll tell you where they think they are broadcasting from, and some of the websites will even give you a map of where they think they are.
And one last question, even though, sorry, Claire, I see that you posted a question too, but can you talk about Medicare scams where they call and ask your age if you have Medicare?
None of those calls are legitimate. None. There's not going to be any government agency who's going to call you to try to help you fill out forms and get on the Medicare, Medicaid program. None. You initiate these contacts. And if you didn't initiate these contacts, just hang up. Please, just hang up. Again, I want to stress that the folks that pull these scams, they are salespeople. They treat you as a business client. They are supposed to, and they're trained, and their personalities is that they find something in common with you, kinship, hobby, discussion, just to reel you in. So don't even give them a chance to befriend you, to know anything further about you than what's on your voicemail greeting.
Great, thanks. And now passing it back to Sophie.
Yes, thank you. I know we're really tight on time, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware, and thank you, Jason, of some of the resources that are available through AARP. I'm going to bring on Strat Maloma. He joins us from our Southern California office. Strat, could you share a bit about the Fraud Watch Network and about the helpline?
I most certainly can. And let me just get my slide up here for a second. 1 second. Give me a moment.
I'm also putting in the chat the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I do want to start off by first saying, thanking Jason for really the wonderful work that he's doing, and also for the great information that he's just shared about, really illustrating how important it is to stay ahead of scammers. There's always something new coming out to try and defraud us of our money. There's a couple of really great resources that we have available as part of the Fraud Watch Network that hopefully will help folks sort of stay ahead of scammers. So before they get to that place where scammers try to target them, they can either have the information and know who to turn to. The Fraud Watch Network is a resource that's available to anybody of any age, whether you're an AARP member or not. You can take advantage of these resources to help you stay informed. And what we're really trying to do with these resources is to provide information, keep the public informed. We also want to help the public find a way that they can get support. If the times are that there's somebody who does fall victim, how do they go about getting back to that place of confidence and living their lives? So providing support is also something that the Fraud Watch Network aims to do. And also it's a voice for folks to share the information of what they're experiencing. Because if a scam is successfully emerging on the East Coast, it won't take long before it happens in our local neighborhoods. So let me tell you about some of the resources that we have available. First of all, we've got a really great Fraud Watch helpline, which is an 800 number that anybody can call and speak to a trained fraud counselor about any questions that they have related to fraud. And that number for to reach them is 877-908-3360. And I know Sophie has put that in chat, so please feel free to take it down from there as well. And you can talk to somebody, ask questions for yourself or a loved one, or get counseling on any type of fraud question or issue that you may be facing. We also have a real great podcast that's called The Perfect Scam, in which you can listen to victims and law enforcement discuss the real details and mechanics of a scam, and kind of hear what their process was, how they recovered, what recommendations were made for that particular situation, and really informative in terms of keeping folks informed. And then we also have what we call our publications. We have a number of really great pieces that we make available to the public. The first one we call the Con Artist Playbook. It really talks about the psychology that scammers use to defraud the victim. So Jason went into this a little bit, talking about how scammers tend to use fear and urgency and get you to react. We're using your emotions as opposed to your logic, and that's fear and happiness and things like that to respond to them. That's one way that they target their victims, and also getting you to make a decision under pressure, not giving you time to think about it, to consider it. Those are some of the tactics that publication, that brochure talks about under the psychology or the Con Artist Playbook. And then we also have what we call the Watchdog Alerts, which is a great piece that talks about the 13 most common scams that are around, whether it's mortgage scams, whether it's tech support scams, grandparenting scams, investment scams. It talks about that. It talks about how each of those scams work, the mechanics of them, the red flags of them, who you can report to, and tips and tricks that you can employ to avoid each of those scams. So that's a really great piece. And then we also have a booklet that talks specifically about frauds and scams that affect our veteran community. Because scammers target veterans too for their service and for their benefits. So that publication talks about that. And then really, we also have a really great dedicated website that where you can do a number of things on that. On that website, we have a scam tracking map. So it's a great place to share information, to also go look up information. So the scam tracking map lets folks, if you're living in one zip code, I'm living in another zip code. If I'm experiencing a certain type of fraud, I can go into that scam tracking map. I can put in a detailed report on it, and somebody living across the country can look up and say, hey, I wonder what's happening in that zip code where I might be considering moving to. And you can get all the reports of different types of frauds that were reported in there. Now, what we do with that information, we take it and we create what we call fraud watch alerts, which we send out every 2 weeks. You can get them by text, you can get them by email, letting you know, here are some of the emerging frauds and scams that we are noticing in communities across the country. And here are some ways or some tips to protect yourself. So that's also something you can sign up from our website. And then there's also what the Veterans Resource Center, where you can get veterans fraud prevention information. You can also look up and see the mechanics of 70 different types of scams, how they work, red flags, prevention tips, all that kind of information. And then you can also do something fun. Fraud is always a difficult and unhappy subject to talk about, but you can take things like quizzes that help you think like a scammer. So if ever you are approached by a scammer, you kind of have that in the back of your mind about what you learned. So there's a number of things that you can do on the Fraud Watch Network. And then the last thing that I really want to emphasize and really appreciate is the work that we do through our volunteers. We also have volunteers that help us, and we affectionately call them the AARP fraud fighters, because they really help us go into the community and share the information about fraud prevention. They do presentations, they do events, and they share information to help the community stay safe, so that whenever they're approached by a fraud and scam, they have the information before they get to a place that's a little bit dangerous. So thank you for those few minutes. Just wanted to share with you what we have available through our Fraud Watch Network. And again, it's a resource that's available to anybody, whether you're AARP membership age or not. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Strat. And thank you so much for mentioning all those amazing resources. And I just wanted to mention that I'm Ryan Kawamoto. I'm the Regional Program Manager for Senior Planet from AARP. We operate under Older Adult Technology Services, which is an affiliate of AARP. And this is where we provide ongoing educational support. We also have a tech hotline. So I just wanted to close this session by putting 2 links in the chat and our toll-free hotline. The first link is actually for an upcoming session on how to be safe online and to use your tech. You can also visit seniorplanet.org for all of our upcoming sessions, but the next session will be actually hosted online from our team in San Antonio, Texas, and it's specifically on how to protect your personal information online. So they'll be going over further best practices and tips. Additionally, we have every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time to 10 a.m. Pacific time, we have the top experts in the field from entities like the Federal Reserve presenting on cybersecurity topics ranging from vulnerability scanning to VPNs. Tomorrow, we're actually having a session on network basics and firewalls with a presentation from an expert who has worked in the banking technology industry for over 20 years. So I put both of those links in the chat. But I just wanted to close too with our toll-free hotline. And this is where if you have any questions related to how to use a device, just looking for support, please call this toll-free number. We are open 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Thursday. And this is where you can talk to a live staff member. If no one picks up, please leave a voice message and we'll have a live staff member give you a call back. And then really, to finally close, I just encourage you all to click on a link that Sophie will be sharing in the chat to please take our survey. It will let us know how we did today. And if you have any ideas about future programs. So now I'll pass it back to Sophie. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, audience, for hanging in there with us. I know we started a little bit late, but I appreciate your attention. Thank you so much, Jason. It's great to have you back and keep us on the latest. I know the topic can be very scary, but I hope that everyone feels empowered with more information on how to protect themselves. Ryan, a pleasure to work with you again over at Senior Planet, and Strat Maloma, our lead on frauds and scams. And a big thank you to Sarita Cardozo, one of our volunteers, as Strat mentioned. She's one of our fraud fighters. Again, thank you so very much for your attention and your time. Be safe. Thank you. This concludes today's program.